Welcome back, Limitless Souls. There's a point in this path where things stop making sense in the way they used to. And it's not because life got worse, but because what used to feel solid it starts to feel constructed. You'll still move through your day. You still do what you need to do. But something in the background has shifted. And it's subtle at first. Then it becomes harder to ignore. You then start noticing that the things you once chased don't carry the same weight anymore. The reaction you used to have don't feel as automatic. Even your sense of self starts to feel less fixed. And that's usually where people get uncomfortable. Because it doesn't feel like gaining something, right? It feels like something is loosening. What most people call awakening, they imagine as clarity, light, understanding, and peace. But there's another side to it that doesn't get talked about enough. It feels like things are just being taken away. Certainty, identity, meaning structures. The things that used to define you start to lose their grip. And the mind doesn't like that. Because the mind is built to hold the structure, to define, to say, this is who I am. This is how things work. This is what matters. So when that starts to loosen, it doesn't feel like alignment. It feels kind of like instability. And this is where the idea of Pleroma starts to make sense. Not as a place, it's not a destination, but it is a recognition. If you look at the earlier stages we went through, there was structure, there was expansion, there was law, there was heart, then there was polarity. Orion, when you see the speed clearly, when you realize you're not just one thing, when you see both sides, the light and the shadow, operating at the same time. That stage feels like conflict because you're still trying to be one side and reject the other, trying to clean yourself into something acceptable. And that is understandable. But something shifts after that, right? It's not immediately or dramatically, but it's quieter. You stop trying to fix yourself. And it's not just because everything is resolved, but because you start seeing the pattern behind it. You may notice that every reaction you have, every emotion, every identity you hold is something that appears, it stays for a while, and then changes. It's not stable. It never was. It just felt stable because you kept reinforcing it. And that is where the deeper question comes in. If everything about who you think you are keeps shifting, then what exactly is constant? Most people answer that question with another identity. I am this kind of person. I am spiritual. I am aware, da 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 da. But those are still constructs. They still change. They still depend on the context. The pleroma is not another identity. It's what remains when identity stops being taken as absolute. And that is not as comforting as people expect. Because identity gives you orientation. It tells you where you stand, who you are, how to move. And without it, things feel, open, too open sometimes. And this is why a lot of people stop here. They go back to structure. They rebuild a new identity, maybe a better one, maybe a more conscious one, but still an identity. And that's fine. But it's not the same as seeing through the mechanism itself. There's a reason the idea of forgetting shows up in these teachings. It is a functional one. If you knew from the beginning that everything you experience is filtered through interpretation, if you saw clearly that your sense of self is built but not fixed, if you recognize that your reactions are patterned, will you still engage the same way? Probably not. You would hesitate. Of course you would question. You would step back. And that would change how you move through the world. So instead, what happens? You forget. Not completely forget, but enough to participate, enough to believe, enough to attach. And then, at some point, something starts to come back. It's not a full memory, but it is more like a feeling, a sense that something isn't as solid as it looks. And that's where people start using words like awakening. But what's actually happening is simpler. You're noticing the structure. You see that your thoughts are not neutral. They are conditioned. You see that your emotions follow patterns. You see that your identity shifts depending on context. And once you see that, you can't fully unsee it. Yes, you can still participate. You can still play the roles. But there's a distance now. And not detachment in a cold way. It's more like awareness in the background. And this is where things get quiet. Because the need to constantly define starts to weaken. And you don't rush to label everything now. You don't need every experience to reinforce who you are. You don't react as quickly. Because you see the reaction forming. And that changes the pace. This is what people misunderstand. They think awakening means becoming something new, maybe a better version, a more evolved self. But it is often feels like the opposite. Less definition, less certainty, less attachment to being a specific kind of person. And that can feel like loss. Because the structure you relied on are not as convincing anymore. But if you stay with it, if you don't rush to rebuild, something else becomes noticeable. There's a stability that doesn't come from identity. You notice that even as thoughts change, something is aware of them. Even as emotions rise and fall, something remains. Even as your sense of self shifts, something doesn't move. And that something is not a concept. You can't describe it properly. The moment you try, you turn it into another idea. But you can notice it just by paying attention to what doesn't change while everything else does. This is where the idea of returning starts to make sense. Not returning to a place, but returning to what was never actually gone. It only seemed hidden because attention was focused on everything else. Maybe on identity, on reaction, on meaning. Once those are seen clearly, they don't disappear, but they lose their authority. You can still think, you can still feel, still act, but you're not as caught. And that changes everything in a way that's hard to explain. Because you're no longer relying on the same structures to define it. This is why the final stage doesn't look impressive from the outside. Because there's no dramatic shift, there's no visible transformation. But internally, something has settled into something more stable than certainty. And from there, life continues. You still move, you still choose, you still engage. But there is less resistance, less urgency to define, less need to hold everything together. But you've already seen that it doesn't hold the way you thought it did. And once you see that, you don't need to force anything now. You just move. And that's where I'll leave this. Sit with it, and not to figure it out, but just to notice what's already there.